Hello, everyone. I am Richie Davidson, and I am the founder and director of the Center for Healthy Minds at the University of Wisconsin-Madison. And I'm also the founder of Healthy Minds Innovations, an affiliated nonprofit that takes the insights from our science and turns them into tools and services that can be used to measure and cultivate well-being at scale. I'm really happy to be here this evening for another one of our Healthy Minds live events, and we have a really wonderful evening in store for you. Some of you, actually, it's your morning. And I'm thrilled to see people from all over the world, from Alaska to Korea, who are joining us this evening. It's really great to have all of you. I'm particularly pleased to introduce you to Raquel Tatar, who is our Senior Director of Measures and Research at Healthy Minds Innovations. Raquel is a relatively new member of our team, but in a very short time, we have come to hold her near and dear and so appreciate her amazing contributions. So it's really an honor for me to introduce her as moderator this evening. So welcome, Raquel.
Thanks, Richie. Hi, everybody. I'm incredibly excited to be here and listen to our amazing panel tonight.
And I'm going to turn it over to you, Raquel, and I'll join you after the panel discussion for the closing. So thank you so much.
Welcome, everybody. I'm speaking to you live from my home, or rather my parents' home in Madison, Wisconsin. As Richie mentioned, I am the Senior Director of Measures and Research here at Healthy Minds Innovations. It's my job to develop and to test new ways of measuring well-being. So please take a moment to use the chat and introduce yourself and share where you're from. I'm seeing Puerto Rico and Madison, of course, Korea, New York, Seattle, amazing people. Thank you so much. We were just talking, it looks like we have about 3,000 people who registered for this event, so it's going to be a good crowd. Thank you for joining us for our Healthy Minds live event. This is the second event in our series this year where we explore ways to apply well-being research to our lives and our society. With everything that has transpired in this past year, it's really clear that we need greater understanding of well-being and resilience and really how to apply that to our lives and our work. I do want to take a moment to thank our amazing donors. This event and really our work overall is really made possible because of the support from our donors. In fact, nearly half of our funding comes from the generosity of people like you, and we really could not do this work and help all the people that we do without your help. So thank you so much for your continued support. If you're interested in supporting our work, there is some links in the chat box, and we'd be grateful for any donations to move our work forward. Before we get started, we do have an expert assisting with closed captioning for those who might need it. There's going to be instructions on how to turn that on YouTube post in the chat box now. We will have plenty of time for questions at the end, so please do comment in the chat box with any questions you might have. We'll collect them, and then we'll do a Q&A at the end of this session. Tonight, we're going to be talking about lessons learned from education as a way of enhancing well-being for everyone. We all know that education shapes us, and it is really important to be attuned to not only the academic rigor of our programs, but also how we learn during these formative years that can really change the trajectory throughout our entire lives. But a lot of times, the way that we treat students and educators during these educational years can diminish their overall well-being. So tonight, we're going to be featuring two programs that make well-being an integral part of their curriculum, in addition to their academic standards. This particular topic is really near and dear to my heart, as prior to HMI, I spent my entire career as an educator of all levels. And this past year has been incredibly tough for everybody, but especially for our students and our educators. So we really do need to be cognizant of how to proactively incorporate well-being science in our schools to mitigate some of this impact going forward. So joining me to talk about this shift in education is Tony Chambers, who is one of the teachers and designers of the Art and Science of Human Flourishing course here at UW-Madison. Daniela Labra is the co-founder and general director of AtentaMente, and Leandro Chernikoff, the co-founder and academic research director at AtentaMente. We're going to have a short introduction and presentation for each person, followed by a short panel discussion, and then a Q&A to address all of your questions. So Daniela, start us off.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Richie and Raquel and HMI for hosting us today. So I wanted to share with you a little bit what we have done as AtentaMente, which is this Mexican nonprofit that's geared basically to lifelong education of healthy habits of mind. And so I would like to, if Brendan, you can share the slides for me, that would be, oh wait, sorry. We're introducing ourselves right now. Sorry, Raquel. So I am the general director of AtentaMente, and AtentaMente is this this non-for-profit that is a Mexican nonprofit. We're based in Mexico City, and we have worked thoroughly with education in social and emotional learning. And we have also worked in other areas with government officials and other places we have worked, and it's an honor for me to be here as part of this HMI team, of the HMI app. I'm very honored to be here.
Hi, everyone. I'm Leandro Chernikoff. I'm the academic and research director at AtentaMente. I work very closely with Daniela, with whom I also live, since she's my wife. And I'm also a graduate student at the Center for Healthy Minds. Richie Davidson is my advisor. So I'm really here with all my family and very happy to be here.
Greetings, everyone. And I'm not the spouse of Leandro or Daniela, to be clear. And I'm at my house in Madison. I'm Tony Chambers, and I am the Director for Equity, Inclusion, and Innovation at the Center for Healthy Minds. And I'm a lifelong educator. I moved to Madison 6 years ago from Toronto, where I was on the faculty at the University of Toronto. And I am overwhelmed and excited to be a part of this panel today. I'm looking forward to learning from all of you. Thank you.
Great. So Daniela, can you start us off with your presentation, please?
Yes, now it's time for the presentation. Thank you for that. So thank you, everyone. So thank you, Brendan, for running this. So I want to talk about AtentaMente. So AtentaMente, we think, or this may be one of our mottos here, that we are trying to change the world, but from the inside out. So working person to person, or helping people build the skills from within. So if I can go to the next one, please. So our mission, and we are a non-for-profit, and as I say, we're more focused in education. And we say we're sharing tools for the development of personal and social well-being to foster a culture that values healthy habits of mind, self-responsibility, and universal ethics. And this is based on caring for oneself and the people and the world we live in. So what we always say, and what actually made us come together, is that this group of people that conform AtentaMente, we've all had the experience of working or trying to address our own inner well-being and trying to find how we could actually work with our inner world to be much more at ease, to have much more well-being coming from within. And we found that these tools were really, really helpful. So we wanted to share this with everyone else. So we have this idea that if we can change, if each of us can change and nurture those best qualities, those innate qualities we have that we can actually fortify and work and transform those things that we feel are our limitations, then through changing ourselves, we can definitely change the world we live in. And as one's mindset changes, then the world you perceive changes, but also your attitude towards the world and your relationship to others can change too. So this is our mission. And the next one, please, Brendan. And why we do it? Well, we do it because, of course, we have actually in Mexico, as in many countries in the world, but in Mexico, we have a pretty intense amount of violence. And I'm sure you have all heard this news, bad news travel broadly normally. So we do have children and teens experimenting a lot of violence. We have, of course, violence that has been really growing in a sense that it has disturbed the social what's the proper English word? Sorry for this, but it's actually really the social, oh my God, the fabric. And of course, we also find that in terms of education, we're not really reaching the goals we want to reach. And we're in the OCDE and trying to, or be assessed by PISA, and we know that our children are not really reaching their full educational potential. And in terms of well-being, we see Mexico ranks normally between the first places of workplace stress. And of course, teachers, for example, are one of the most stressed out professions. So we see that there's a lot of area of improvement in terms of what we can do with our current state of things. And there's one really important thing, because of course there are the problems that we encounter, but then we know that well-being is a skill. So we found that there was this latent need, that well-being is our underlying goal as human beings. So, and if well-being can be developed, then we have a really good reason to actually address these skills and share these skills and help in this way transform these deep problems that we're finding in our society and in many societies. Next one, please. So how we do it, what we actually do is teach contemplative-based social and emotional learning tools based on current scientific knowledge. And we do this throughout the lifespan. So we started doing this with children, but actually with small age children. And actually we started doing this with adults, because this is something that we know is something you can always improve. Maybe children have a broad capacity for this, but actually it never ends. Like neuroplasticity, as we know, is this capacity for our brain to change with experience. So it's something you can build throughout your lifespan. Next one, please. And how we do it? Well, because we have more than 100 trained instructors and an amazing team. And this is something we've focused on, training people that can help us train other people. And the next one, please. And with a little help from our friends. So what you see here is Dr. Richie Davidson in 2014 came to talk to Congress. And of course, with his help and also the advice and help from other people like Dr. Alan Wallace, Susan Kaiser Greenland, Dr. James Gross, Marco Antonio Karam, Peter Senge, Eve Ekman, and other people who have helped us review our programs, give us advice on terms of the science, help us construct the curriculum. So this is how we have been able to do it. And what we deliver, which would be the next slide, please. Sorry, this is based on something that some of you, if you know the HMI framework, then this will be very familiar to you, because we know all our programs are structured in terms are based on this idea that there are 4 pillars of well-being that are malleable capacities of our minds that we can really cultivate. So we are talking about attention, that would be awareness, and we're talking about bondad in Spanish, the Spanish for kindness, that would be connection, and clarity, which is insight, and direction, which is for our equivalent of purpose. So as you see, our frameworks, those of you who may know the framework for HMI, or you heard the previous talks in HMI Live, then you know that we are sharing is a very, very similar, basically the same framework for working in these capacities. And the way we've been using these capacities in our work, can I have the next one, please, is in the framework, and mostly this in terms of the educational setting, the social and emotional learning framework. So what we do is we understand the 4 pillars to actually be transversal axes that will help us or sustain the building of emotional well-being, then healthy relationships, and then of course the thought or the idea that we're immersed in building common well-being. And in this framework, then we work with the different competencies or social emotional competencies you see on the right-hand side of the slide. So going from working from within, working my relationships, and working with skills for life. Can I have the following, please? So the way we've done it, we actually address like 2 big groups, or our programs are directed for two big groups in this idea that we can really learn throughout life. So one is education and schools, and we work mainly with teachers, and Leandro will talk more about that later. And through teachers, have them develop their well-being, and then being able to model and teach these skills to children, not just teachers, the whole education system. And then we work, or we offer our programs openly to the general public, and we also have a mobile app. And so we try to offer these different, everybody, tools for this development. And I have the next one, please. What we started in 2011 with an idea and an inspiration coming actually from a talk from His Holiness the Dalai Lama to the Teachers Union, where he was saying that we have to train not only the cognitive skills, but also the heart. So what we have done and the way we work, and can I have the following, please, is that we develop curriculum, then we implement this in person, online, in different ways, and then we do evaluation or assessment of what we do. And these, of course, are things that are core to the way we build our curriculum. We want to see if it works when we implement. We want to know if people are finding this useful, and assessment can help us, of course, in improving our programs. I just wanted to point out that we have developed a lot of curriculum, and we started our first really encounter with a real world, or I would say is working with government officials. It was wonderful to be able to take these skills of well-being to public servants, because from there it was really serving, for example, one of our big ideas of making this a culture, changing culture. So working with public servants was one of our big steps where we began. And then we've developed a lot of material. We've had the luck, and can we have the following, please? That we've had the fortune of being able to work in a very, very broad context. Like our programs have already been implemented in Mexico and been taken by a huge amount of people up to now, because there's such a need, so that we have been able to be in 22 states, working with around 500,000 people online, which of course the pandemic has helped in that sense, a bigger reach, because teachers have been more willing and able to take this. And of course, we do this assessment, as I said, with our advisory board that helps us really build good science of well-being in education and long life learning. Next one, please. And we also know that what we're doing is feeding or helping the build towards these sustainable goals. That if we can bridge the developmental gap, because we know that social emotional learning and these skills will reduce violence, will actually enhance academic performance, and will actually increase well-being. So with this, we know that we can really help bridge the development gap, and through this reduce inequality, that we want to bring quality education, promote mental health, and promote a culture of peace. So we know that we're working in these bigger goals, not just our own goals. And the following, please, the next one. So this is what we have done, and with this I will be finishing, knowing that education is the most powerful weapon to change the world. And in this sense, coming back to AtentaMente's core idea I presented at the beginning, we're talking about educating ourselves, helping others, of course, but basically what we do is help people focus in their own minds and educating themselves and really helping themselves, no matter what age, at what time, or even until what degree, but we can all enhance our capacity for well-being. And that is the most powerful weapon to change ourselves and to change the world. So this is what I would want to present today, and thank you very much for this space. And I'm sure Leandro will talk more about the details of our educational program.
Hello, everyone. Thank you, Daniela, for your presentation that saved me a lot of time about talking about AtentaMente. And before I start, I would like to maybe interact a little bit with the audience, if it's possible. So first, if you're listening correctly, could you please write on the chat the number 223, just to make sure that you can hear me properly. And if maybe I'll wait a little bit and see if something appears. 223 is the magic number. Okay, maybe there's a little bit delay. So in the meantime, oh, there we go. Yeah, a lot of 223s. Thank you so much, everyone. So now I have a second question, and this question is: I would like to ask you, what do you think? And please write it on the chat. What do you think is the purpose of education? And maybe take a few seconds to think about it. Maybe some of you have thought about it for a long time, but think about it, and then if whatever answer that you come up with, maybe ask why another 2 times. So let's say the purpose of education is have people with good skills. Then why we need people with good skills, and then a couple of times more why. Then I think some already are answering. Thank you, Rab. 8659, well-being. Some are already writing numbers. Well-being. So now we can maybe share our screen. Thank you, Brendan. Yes, happiness, well-being, exactly, because learning, yes. So our work is related, we really believe that the main purpose of education is well-being. And then, of course, there's the question of what well-being is, but this is not the topic of our talk. Next slide, please. And our program, we've been working with our programs for a long time, and I just wanted to put this picture because this is at the foothills of the Himalayas, where Daniela and I spent some time, and I think it was around 2010 where we started thinking about how to improve education. And this is a place where we spent some time, and it was a beautiful place where we have time to think and reflect. Next slide. So I'll tell you a little bit about our program, which is Educating for Wellbeing. As Daniela said, it's a contemplative-based socio-emotional learning, and basically Educating for Wellbeing, the core component is a professional development component. So it has 3 main goals. The first one is to develop, educators' socio-emotional competencies and well-being. Through that they can promote the socio-emotional and socio-emotional development and well-being of their students, and then to integrate socio-emotional learning into the districts and school culture with a systemic approach. This is something that we've been doing for a few years now, and the whole program has 3 components. The first one is now a Zoom-based introduction to socio-emotional learning. The second is an asynchronous online learning with 3 modules, which I'll tell you a little bit more later. And then we have a systemic leadership program. And those 3 components basically comprise our program, Educating for Wellbeing. Next slide. Yes. So now you can see how it looks, maybe with a little bit more detail. So we have a 10-hour introductory course, which is synchronous. And then following that, we have 20-week online course, 3 modules, 7 weeks each. And then we have some synchronous component after each module, so to keep things fresh and support people in a synchronous or sometimes in-person component. That's about 80 hours. Sorry, that's about 70 hours. And then for a smaller group, then we have this systemic leadership program. Its main purpose is to develop local capacity and to develop a group of people that can adapt and sustain socio-emotional learning in a given context. Maybe I'll say something about later. Next slide, please. So this is how our programs used to look prior to the pandemic. As you can see, they were in person. Usually they were very interactive. And next slide. And now this is how they look. As you can see, Daniela is one of our main instructors, and we are delivering our courses through Zoom. That meant a lot of work and learning in how to deliver the same contents digitally, and I think this is a challenge that everyone has faced. Next slide. Then our 3 modules, online modules. One is related with introduction to socio-emotional learning, especially attention training, emotional awareness, and some of the things related with the science of socio-emotional learning. And then we go into a whole module on emotion regulation, basically emotional awareness, but mostly emotion regulation. And then our third module touches on pro-social skills, especially, kindness, compassion, joy, and equanimity, basically. Those are the three, and that's how we end this initial part of the professional development. Thank you, Brendan. We're catching up together. So as in all our courses, we provide ongoing support to participants in many ways. Now we're doing it a lot through WhatsApp groups, and many times actually through the phone, providing all forms of support so that people are happy with the program, so that we know what's going on. And of course, we have surveys and all forms of ways. But this is something really important for us, that we make sure that everyone that takes our courses feels supported and welcome. And this is one of the ways in which we do that. Next one. And of course, we also think that developing an ongoing learning community is really important. And now with the new challenges, we've moved to an online learning community through Facebook groups and other forums. Next one. We have these lesson plans. We have a curriculum, especially for, we develop curriculum mostly for preschool and then for teenagers. And basically the whole idea is that we can provide not only the professional development, but the curriculum that accompanies the work with the students. Next one. As Daniela said, we have a mobile app that supports the training. Next one. And I will tell you very briefly about 3 projects that I think might be interesting for you to hear about, and then maybe for questions. The first one is a project that we have in Coahuila. Yes, so we're working, yeah, perfect. So we're working with the state of Coahuila. We've been working with them for a while. And basically, we're implementing all components of educating for well-being. And within the next 3 years, we hope to reach 35,000 teachers, principals, and educational authorities. This is a really interesting program because we've been working with all levels of the state educational authorities. And the interesting thing here is that we've been collaborating with the Ministry of Education in Coahuila, and there's a big involvement from the private sector, meaning that there's a board that is overlooking and supporting and funding partially this project. Next one. The second one has a different flavor, which is we're adapting educating for well-being for indigenous communities in the Yucatan Peninsula. This is a very exciting project. I'm so happy that we're doing it and we're learning so much. But basically what we're doing is we're collaborating with the Kellogg Foundation to implement this adaptation of all components of our program with 1,500 principals and teachers within the next 2 years. We've been having a wonderful experience learning and collaborating with indigenous teachers, especially Maya teachers, principals, educators. So this has been a fantastic opportunity. I will say something a little bit later. And then finally, we're conducting an impact evaluation. And this is, next one, that little, yeah, thank you. So this we're implementing, to my understanding, the largest contemplative-based RCT randomized control trial ever made. This is something that we're doing in collaboration with the Center for Healthy Minds and its support, both in terms of funding and scientific support. And here we're reaching 2,000 principals and teachers, 23,000 preschool kids, and we're implementing the first 2 components. In this one, I know how many kids we have exactly because we're actually collecting data for all the kids as well. So I think this will be, in terms of research, a very exciting project. And I just wanted to point out that one of our projects is in collaboration with the private sector, the other one with a foundation, another one with the University of Wisconsin. Next one. This is my last slide. And I just wanted to share some lessons learned. And before we keep, so the first one is to build identity and bridges. So what I mean by this, I think we've done a lot of work in the initial stages of our work at AtentaMente to build identity, to have our own programs, to have very clear what were our purpose and how we wanted to go about education, and trying to find out what we wanted to bring to education, and also have a community of people that could help us with that. And then there's another big, super important part, which is building bridges. And building the bridges means collaboration, of course. And building the bridges, I think, is the aspect that has allowed our programs to actually reach so many people, because we've had the opportunity to have wonderful collaboration. So for us, building bridges without much identity maybe would not work so well for us. Building identity without collaborations either. So I think we've learned that we really need to put emphasis on both. The second one is be flexible and listen. And this is something that, at least for me, has been really hard, because I'm not flexible and I don't listen much. But basically what we've learned is that every time that we have to work in collaboration with state authorities, with educational authorities of any kind, we really need to find ways of adjusting, adapting, and really listening to the needs of the people that we're going to be working with. So this has been really important in terms of our lessons learned. And the last one is persevere with friends. So our experience, and maybe some of you here are starting to work in education, trying to do something about it. And our experience is that you really need to persevere, that it takes a lot of time, a lot of effort, a lot of, fall and stand up again. And if you do it with friends, and if you think long-term, usually it's a little bit better. As I was reviewing this, I thought, maybe these three things, or these three lessons learned, actually pretty much work for everything. So it's not something very specific about education. It probably works also with, life. So I think that's all I wanted to share now, and I look forward to your questions. Thank you so much. And I'll leave you now with the wonderful Tony Chambers.
Thank you, Leandro and Daniela. It was quite an exciting experience hearing about the work at AtentaMente, and hopefully we could follow up a little bit later about some of the specifics, because I'm quite excited about what you all are doing and what you're learning there. I want to talk with you all just a little bit about something that we're doing at the Center for Healthy Minds called the Art and Science of Human Flourishing. What I'd like to do is a couple of things, and I'm really excited about spending some time in the Q&A period, so I'm going to try to run through this as quickly as I can. I want to talk a little bit about what is the art and science of human flourishing, share with you why we offer it and why we do it. I want to share with you mostly about what we're learning from this experience. And then I want to talk a little bit, really briefly, about how we can actually make whatever it is that we do accessible broadly. And then I'm going to close out with a couple of comments specifically about the impact of the art and science of human flourishing on issues of equity, inclusion, and diversity for the kind of students that we work with. For decades of research, what we've learned is that college students experience considerable change when they move from high school to college. And then you add on to that a global pandemic, national reckoning with historical racism in US society, and political discontent and economic uncertainties. And what we have is significant uncharted territory, not only for those students entering college, but for all of those who are charged with facilitating their learning and development. Enters the art and science of human flourishing, at least what we now know of it as. And keep in mind, when this was started in 2015, it in some ways was operating in a very different climate than it was this year. So what I'm going to share with you is lessons from since 2015, but specifically about what we're learning from this past year under all of those strange circumstances. What is the Art and Science of Human Flourishing? The Art and Science of Human Flourishing is a course and a set of related activities that's designed for first-year undergraduate students. And this program was developed in collaboration between the University of Wisconsin-Madison, the University of Virginia, and Penn State University. A set of colleagues got together several years ago and decided this is what seems to be needed among the growing cadre of students and the concerns that students have. The Art and Science of Human Flourishing has several components, and what we do is invite students to develop their own definition and experience of flourishing. We never in the course or in the related activities tell students what flourishing is, because it's not a one-size-fits-all experience. And it also does not operate in a linear way. It's quite dynamic in the way that it's experienced by participants. It's based on the ACIP model, which Daniela explained in her opening comments, that was developed by Richie Davidson and some of his colleagues. And again, to repeat, it's awareness, connection, insight, and purpose. So the whole course is based around that framework. And within the framework, there are 14 related themes that we try to cover in the course. The course is being 15 weeks. We try to cover each week a different theme. The course meets 3 times a week, and it's team taught by 6 individuals, Dr. Davidson being one of them. Students start the course, and we have 150 students online. They start each course with a daily practice, a contemplative practice. They utilize the Healthy Minds program app. Again, I believe Daniela mentioned this early on, which was developed by Healthy Minds Innovation, and it provides a whole slew of materials and resources for people, period, to engage in practice. It also collects data, if it's used as a research tool, on the utilization and the impact of using this tool. So students meet 3 times a week. 2 times in the total group and 1 time in a small laboratory of up to 25 students that's facilitated by one of the team members, where we get into all the specifics about that particular theme that we've covered for that week. Next slide, please. So these are the areas that's covered in the course, the 14 specific themes that come up. Now, you have awareness, connection, insight, and integration to some degree is the beginning of purpose, but purpose for us is a cross-cutting theme that goes straight across all of the topics and all of the stages of the framework. But this is just to give you a flavor of the kind of specifics that we deal with, the thematic specifics that we deal with in the course. Next slide, please. So why did we do this? Why did we offer this course and its related activities in the Art and Science of Human Flourishing? Well, first of all, like I said earlier, we recognize and we support the developmental needs of students as they transition from college, from high school to college. We know that they receive, process, and make meaning of information in very unique and different ways during that transition. They also develop a sense of identity. Psychosocially, they try to understand who they are in relation to others. For some of our students, this may be the first time that they've engaged with someone who is quite different from them, either racially, gender identity, sexuality, language, other parts of the world. So they go through these transformations, and we wanted to acknowledge and support that transition. The second reason why we offer the course is that we're trying to address this rapidly growing dynamic of mental health and emotional health challenges that are confronting students. This is especially during this past year when we had the pandemic, where we're still having the pandemic, And we're continuing with this racial injustice reckoning. And then, of course, we know that there's still political and social and economic uncertainties as we move forward. So we know these students are carrying this burden as they are locked down, many of them, in spaces where they didn't anticipate. They are not experiencing, as they've told us, a college experience the way they thought they would experience. And it's creating a whole ton of issues, which we'll talk about in a moment. We recognize also the particular challenges that populations from historically underrepresented student groups experience while they're in predominantly white universities. Again, many of these students came from predominantly communities and schools of color, and they entered into a space that was unfamiliar to them in many cases, and were not always equipped to manage some of the experiences they had. We'll talk about that in a bit as well. And we also, and finally, wanted to assist in creating habits of mind or supporting existing habits of mind and heart to sustain their well-being and flourishing while they're in college and well beyond college. Okay, next slide. So this is a graph that is a set of data from work that's done at the Penn State Center that collects information on student health outcomes. And this was pre-pandemic between 2010 and 2019. And I don't want to go through the data, but I just wanted to share with you that from 2010 to 2019, and I would argue well beyond 2019, particularly starting in 2020, student challenges, mental health challenges have escalated, all but hostility and substance use. Substance use has declined. Hostility apparently has declined, but depression, anxiety, distress, eating disorders, substance use, family disease, and what's not on here is suicide ideation. Our student suicide, college student suicide ideation and activity has increased precipitously over this period of time and well beyond. So students are in the middle of a significant mental health crisis we know about. And we wanted to, as a part of this course, help students with managing, acknowledging, and managing and seeking support when and if they encounter some of these conditions. Next slide, please. So, what have we learned? And most important, what have our students taught us as we go through this course? Well, based on the early research that's being done with our students, as well as a control group of students who hadn't taken the course, what we found so far is that students who've taken the course have greater compassion toward roommates. Those who, well, of course, they're first year students moving in with someone that they didn't live with before, may be quite different from themselves, may have different types of behaviors and value systems, but these students who have taken the courses have displayed greater compassion toward those roommates. They've displayed increased ability to see others' perspectives, which nowadays is a critical condition, a critical quality, not just for students, but for most of us, if not all of us. The other thing that we've learned from our students, as opposed to the control group, is that they're more mindful. They have more mindfulness, self-compassion, and a sense of connection. In other words, many of the conditions that are consistent with the framework that Richie and others have laid out for us. Next slide, please. Now, we haven't done as much data collection in a systematic way on issues of equity, but these are the things that students tell us through some of our focus groups, as well as explaining to us through the classes and through individual interactions we have with students. We will be exploring some of the impact that the course and related activities have particularly on students who are from underrepresented backgrounds. But these are some of the things that they've been telling us. All students learn better when we approach the class, as well as the delivery of material, exercises, practices, when they learn from a perspective of equity and inclusion. It's sort of like the universal design approach, when what says essentially what's good for some, in many cases, is good for all. So we don't teach equity and inclusion just to students from underrepresented backgrounds. We teach from a perspective of equity and inclusion to all students. Second thing that we're learning, and this is very critical, because one of the small groups that we have for the course is made up of exclusively of students who are BIPOC or Black, Indigenous, or other persons of color, as well as first generation students and low income students. So all 25 students have been identified as students with those kind of backgrounds. And it matters to them who teaches the course, right? I'm the instructor for that small group, for that 25 group lab. And students have told us over and over, because they are identifying with someone, me in this case, who they think have similar experiences and background and concerns, that their learning process is unique. It speaks to them. They come to class with a level of understanding and comfort in sharing where they are and what some of the themes mean to them from their own lived experience. The third thing we're learning is that lived and what students live and what they experience, and they're from diverse backgrounds, we have to be intentional in our curriculum about building in practices, discussions, examples, images, materials, guests. We have to be intentional about that. It can't be accidental or happenstance. What that essentially means is that those of us on the team are in constant learning mode to make sure that we are doing the best we can to bring to students a very global and a very diverse learning experience. We can't assume that any material or background is actually speaking broadly to students and is speaking to students from our committed stance to equity and inclusion. We have to be quite intentional, and we have multiple discussions weekly as a team about this. And finally, there needs to be much more robust research on the effects of this course on BIPOC and other marginalized student populations, because we are beginning to see what's going on with these students. We know that some of the mental health and emotional health crises that are experienced broadly by students generally are being exacerbated multiple times over by these populations. And we think this course, as a supplement and complement to counseling service and other health services, is critical. Next slide. So I'm going to end it right there, but I needed for you all to see who this team was. And we have a good time. You can see Dr. Davidson down in the corner. I don't know if it's your right or my right, but these are the other people that are part of the team. And I wanted you all to see them. So let's get into a conversation. Thank you all.
This is excellent. Thank you so much to talk with us about this amazing work done by amazing people. This is just incredible. So we're going to go into our Q&A part of the program now, but just to kick things off while Sean is getting ready, if you could each take a minute and just tell us of a particular lesson learned either through AtentaMente or through the UW course, and how is a way that our viewers can take some of these strategies and incorporate this into their own communities, either in their personal lives or in their work lives, especially if they're educators. So Daniela, you've gotten a break, so we'll start with you.
Okay, well, I think that the main lesson is for me, and I think that's what we mostly try to convey, and as personally and with the people we teach and learn from, is that definitely this educating this well-being as a skill is the most worthwhile endeavor. But as any skill, it won't come in a day. With any skill, you'll need to invest time, have a very good idea that you want to do it, and actually allow yourself, to put the effort in building this. And I think this is something that we try to see, that this is a long-term, I would say lifelong learning that but we can all improve, and we have really seen that this makes so much sense. If we invest some time as educators, for example, in our own well-being, this will pay off so broadly in the way we can be with the kids and offer these close relationships that we know that really transform the classroom, the school climate, and thus really allow, even for children and teens that are coming from very violent environments or difficult environments, this closeness, this positive climate, this modeling. When we can feel better, we behave better. So I think it really can transform education, and we can all do it. And it just serves us as people, for our own lives. So I think investing in your own internal development is, I would say, the best investment. And I think this would be the main lesson learned.
Well, that is fantastic. And what a great lesson to pass on to our kids, right? That there are some skills that are worthwhile investing time and effort in, and that it's okay that it's taking time and effort, that, you're not bad at it just because it's taking a little longer, speaking as someone who is still learning. That's wonderful. Leandro, did you have any lessons learned you wanted to give our viewers before we move on to Q&A?
Yeah, I can, of course, echo Daniela's suggestions and learnings. I think we've shared those together. And maybe I can add that, sometimes it's going to be difficult, and sometimes there's going to be pushback. And as you were saying, Raquel, these things take time. But I think as long as, maybe do a little bit of work with yourself so that, you can try to model these things, and at the same time foster the sort of inner strength to keep on going, little by little, and usually not only in one direction. So, when there's pushback, maybe you retreat a little bit and then go from other angles. So our experience is that, we've been building collaborations, having conversations, and sometimes those conversations take time to flourish and to, give fruit. So as long as you keep having those conversations, I think keep having similar or good motivation to try to help others, and at the same time, make sure that you're trying to embody those qualities that you're supposed to be hoping others to develop. I think those three things might help.
Definitely. Yeah. Learning is not a linear path is a difficult lesson, I think, for us all to learn. Moving forward is enough, for sure. Tony, how about you?
Yeah. The way I look at college-age students or college students is not as students. I look at them as future leaders, people who will be dentists, who will be doctors, who will be lawyers, who will be your child's teacher in many cases. And the lessons we're learning from them are both positive and very distressing at the same time. They're hurting. Our students are hurting, right? Not only hurting mentally and emotionally, many of them are hurting physically. And they're hurting from things that many of us have created in the world. The other part that I'm learning from our students is that they're extremely resilient and they're extremely creative, right? They have what they have taught us through the course and various other interactions is that they have the presence of mind to create something out of nothing, to create hope out of despair, right? And they could see a way forward in many ways that we can't see, and they're able to share with us. And if we were able to, or if we had the capacity to listen to them, I think that collectively we could probably move in ways that we can't see right now. This is a difficult time, and I think they have some lessons to teach us for sure. And this course has opened my eyes, and hopefully my colleagues, to the possibilities that these young folks can provide for us.
Yeah, isn't that the best part of being an educator? Just how much you learn in return.
Always.
Yeah, it's really the best part.
Always.
All right, Shad, you're up with some delicious questions from our audience.
Hello, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us, and thank you to our presenters for your insight. Our first question comes from Silveritas, and it is, do you offer this outside of Mexico? Maybe Venezuela? For example, do you offer these programs outside of into other countries? This is for Leandro and Daniela, sorry.
Well, I would say we do, in the sense that they're open and that we can. We have had the fortune to work, like Leandro said, very thoroughly within like the education system in Mexico. But we also try to offer these programs. And now, with the virtual world we're living, it's open, of course, and we would love to have more people come. I think it's also a matter of bandwidth that we can actually focus on these really big projects with states. We are a small NBO, so we need this focus, but definitely our programs would be, and we really try and think always, that this could be available for other Spanish speaking people around the world. So in terms of we can, yes, we can. And we do sometimes when we have enough time, and we do. So we, of course, if you can look into our webpage, we will have offerings there when we're open to other countries, and would be happy to work with other countries.
Yeah. And if I may just jump in, Daniela, I think something, I think Silverita said, our program, from the onset, we didn't only think about Mexico. We have a sort of a very strong Latin American identity, and the way we developed this was thinking more Latin America. So I think everything that we've developed has that quality that might be relevant and useful for certainly all Latin American audiences. It was thought that way. It was developed from within sort of Latin American authors, and with that motivation. So hopefully, yes, we can definitely offer it.
Mm-hmm. All right. Thank you so much, Daniela and Leandro. Our next question comes from Nani. What assessments, tests, scales, and metrics have you used, or have you developed your own? And this question is to Tony.
Yes, thank you, Nani. We've developed our own, and most of the work has been led by one of our colleagues at the Center for Healthy Mind, Matt Hirschberg, and his team of folks, with some feedback from the rest of us. So yeah, he's developed our own, and we've contributed to his approach. One of the limitations, and this is an opportunity, I think, for those of you who are listening, who may want to support the work. The opportunity is for us to do a lot more robust research, preferably some randomized control work with some of these students, to get a clearer sense about the impact that this work may have on their learning experience as well as their future trajectory. Because some of the anecdotal work feedback that we're getting is quite astounding, for sure. And it's also consistent with what's happening in other places in the US and around the world when classes attend to the whole person, when education focuses on the whole person and not just on their cognitive abilities or inabilities in some cases. But if we focus on that whole student, we don't have enough robust information to help guide future educational offerings around how students learn and grow. So yeah, we do our own, but I'm hoping that we could expand the work well beyond what we've been doing so far with support that's out there and beyond.
Thank you so much, Tony. Our next question comes from Catherine. How do you all approach or work through resistance from school staff in environments that experience trauma on a regular basis?
Maybe I can say something. So I think resistance mostly come from imposition. So trying to impose, sometimes when things come from, for example, higher authorities, has, in our experience, not worked well at all. So one of the things that we've found working with teachers and principals and educators in Mexico all over is that, to the extent that we take the time to have conversations, meaningful conversations with all levels of the educational sort of structure, listening, tending to their concerns, and then taking the time to actually try to address those concerns, then that resistance shifts into collaboration and into, nice, positive work collaboration. So I think that the main thing is that when we started, we were very kind of this is the way you have to do it, and we are the experts, and that didn't work at all. And even having the support of the Ministry of Education or something of the sort, but just taking the time to listen and have conversations takes longer, but it's much, much more meaningful. And I think, as Tony was saying, you learn so much, and you get the sense that what you're doing is actually addressing what people need, which is the reason why we're actually doing these things.
Can I say something about trauma? Trauma comes in different forms, and it shows up in different forms. And sometimes it's not noticeable as trauma the way we sort of package it. And I don't think I need to say much more about that, because all of us have experienced some level of trauma, not in the same form, and we manifest our behavior in different ways as well. The other thing about the question is that teachers have not been taught how to deal with diverse forms of trauma, acknowledge it and see it. And sometimes, by no fault of their own, in some cases, they don't know how to respond, right? One of the things that we're trying to do in the Art and Science of Human Flourishing is provide a teaching academy for those who are interested not only in replicating the course, but in putting their own spin, if you will, on delivering some of the topics either in a dedicated course format, whereas they go through the same process that we go through with students, or integrating it into other disciplinary approaches, engineering, for example, or the arts. Can you teach about flourishing and the whole student in a discipline that's targeted primarily on gathering information and applying that particular information? Can we do that? Can you recognize students who are experiencing different forms of trauma or pleasure in that case? I mean, whatever the opposite of trauma is, in your class, if you're teaching primarily topic discipline related matters. So I think we need to flip the switch on how teachers are taught. And we also need to recognize that trauma and the opposite of trauma manifests itself and shows itself in different ways. And we could capitalize on that in the learning development of students.
Thank you so much to you. That was actually very interesting as well. Our next question comes from Teresa. And the question is, as SEL skills are now more understood and attractive to employers, have you measured employability changes for students who have gone through your program? This can be to anyone, but specifically Tony, I think you just were catching on that.
No, we haven't. To answer that question quite directly, no, we haven't gotten into any employability measurements at all. But what I can tell you is, based on studies that have been done primarily here in the States about what's attractive to employers, most of the social and emotional learning skills, as well as some of the other human skills, holistic skills, are those that employers are looking for. Of course, you need to know something about the work, right? You need to know something about what you're going to be doing. But much of that can be taught by employers. What can't be taught in many cases are ways in which you engage with people, ways in which you listen, ways in which you could provide leadership or management in a team environment. Those are the type of things that I think are quite critical. And those are the type of things we're hoping, as we move forward in our assessment process, we'll be able to understand, particularly as it relates to diverse populations that are becoming more and more prevalent in employable situations. Can you engage one another in situations where many of the people are quite different than you are? So yeah, that's what I'm hoping we'll move toward at some point in the very near future.
Sounds like I know what my next project is going to be.
Oh, yeah.
Thank you, Tony. Our next question comes from James. What recurrent obstacles delay acquisition of well-being or flourishing skills amongst participating students of different ages, such as developmental trauma, habits of avoidance, etc.?
Daniela, I think you were speaking a bit about how the curriculum at AtentaMente was shifted from targeting kids and then targeting adults. So I think this question really gets at how do you teach children versus teaching adults some of these skills?
I think, I'm just like trying to understand the question properly and saying if we have identified what is either, I guess, in children or adults, like blocking that development. So I don't think, again, that we have measured that in terms of having data about what is really blocking. I think Leandro would answer better because he's the more studied one here, but definitely I think that there is an element, and just to answer that one thing, and somebody wrote this in the chat, the first, I think, more than anything is the buy-in, the understanding that actually you can have more well-being, like that you could actually do better, that the state of yourself as a kid, of course, but of course as an adult, that you can actually change the way you feel, the way you relate to others, that you can learn to have better relationships to yourself and to others. And I think that first thing is sometimes that we're unaware. We're even unaware, that we can. And then, of course, there's habits, as always, like if I say, why don't you stop eating whatever, you shouldn't eat, or doing what, it's hard sometimes to change a habit unless you have a lot of clarity about the cost of a habit and you're really determined, to change. And then you build a new habit repeatedly, sustainably, So I think there is the buy-in. And then the work that needs to be done is, I think, something you cannot avoid. But I don't know. I mean, here, I think Leandro would know more, and Tony would know more. They studied more, I'm sure.
I would just add very briefly to James' questions that I think what is in our work, the main recurring obstacle that delays those acquisitions is the role of the adult. So I think to the extent that the adult is not actually facilitating, teaching, or modeling those skills, then it's impossible, or it's very, very hard. And I think that is not only to well-being and socio-emotional skills, but just to anything that you need to learn. Good teachers are really important, and being teaching socio-emotional skills adds like a particular component, which is the embodiment, the modeling, which is a little bit requires a lot of training to the point that you get to this embodiment. And I think that is the main thing. And of course, there are other structural obstacles that may not facilitate the implementation of this program. So I think that's the main thing.
Let me just add to what Leandro and Daniela has said quickly. It is the adult or the teacher or the parent or the community, but it's also the culture of the educational environment, right? We have expectations that students are smart and they have the right answer. We oftentimes don't reward failure. We don't reward the wrong answer or the different answer, right? So we put that kind of pressure on young folks and not so young folks to have the right answer, or there's a penalty. So we operate at it from a perspective of fear. Most of the time, I'm afraid of not being seen as being smart. And the faculty and teachers model that behavior, right? We have to be seen as smart, right? And so we create all these stresses. Now, if we were to open up and allow for students and adults to share their perspective and new ideas, innovative ways of thinking about something that may or may not fit into the right box, I think we'd probably break down some of these barriers for sure.
All right, and that concludes our Q&A session. Thank you so much to everyone for being able to ask us those questions. Just a reminder, we'll be sending out a list of transcripts, including answering questions, as well as the video link, so you can watch this at your own convenience. Thank you so much, and thank you, Raquel.
Thank you, everybody. Thank you, Leandro, Daniela, and Tony, for not only your wonderful work on this, but also for taking the time and talking to us tonight. Thank you so much for our audience for your really, really thoughtful questions. We really appreciate you taking the time with us tonight. And here is Richie to wrap us up.
And now is my turn to express my deepest gratitude. What an amazing team Daniela and Leandro and Tony, you each are doing such amazing, important work, and it's really an honor to be collaborating with you on this work. And Raquel, I didn't know that we can include being a host and a moderator to your growing list of amazing skills. Thank you so much for this beautiful convening. And maybe, Raquel, you can tell us a little bit more about opportunities in the future that are coming our way in our Healthy Minds Live events.
Absolutely. So we're going to have our third free event in the Healthy Minds Live series on August 16th. There'll be more information about that and registration coming soon. The Healthy Minds Innovation Team is also hosting a summer masterclass from July 6th through August 24th. I'm actually going to be participating in that class, so you can see me there. There's going to be a promo code, early bird, that you can use for $75 off through May 15th, which I believe is Friday, so act soon. If you missed our first event, there's a recording link in the chat that you can go and see it, and this event will also be recorded, and we can share out the link for that. You can also join our mailing list and social media accounts so that we can let you know of any other events that we might have, that we have planned, and also to keep you aware of all of our scientific findings. We publish often, so we can keep you abreast of all of that. If you are interested in learning more about AtentaMente, you can visit them at their website, and it's on the slides right now. And once again, thank you so much for our generous donors for helping us create a kinder, wiser, and more compassionate world. And if you would like to continue supporting our Healthy Minds Live series and all the work that we do at Healthy Minds Innovations, feel free to do so. We really do appreciate your support. Thank you so much, everybody, and have a great night.